In 2023, most companies were just experimenting with AI. But now in 2025, that phase is effectively over, with the largest companies now shifting heavily from pilots into longer-term scale-outs. And so here, I want to break down how enterprises are institutionalizing generative AI. So we're going to be looking at budget changes, procurement changes, and what this means for anybody who is leading or building generative AI inside of a company. Now, for those who are new here, I've led and deployed generative AI projects across dozens of Fortune 500 companies, and I've seen firsthand how companies are transitioning from experimentation and now into a company-wide scale-out. In a recent McKinsey study across 2,000 companies, they have seen that now enterprises are spending less time experimenting and more time scaling. For companies over $5 billion in revenue, 39% are now scaling, 10% of them are fully scaled, and only 17% of them are still experimenting. And this is a pretty big inflection point, especially since once companies actually start scaling, it becomes part of the enterprise operating model. And so along that becomes budget owners, governance, and long-term ownership. And so this is also why budgeting and procurement is changing so rapidly as well. So let's start with budgeting first. Menlo Ventures estimates that enterprise spend on APIs is $8.4 billion, and this is only expected to grow going forward. As one CIO put it, what I spent in 2023 is now what I spend in a week. But the important part isn't actually the amount, it's where the budgets are coming from. Andreessen Horowitz surveyed 100 CIOs, and last year they found that 24% of LLM spending came from those innovation budgets. And these are typically the primary budgets used for experimentation. However, this year the number dropped to 7%, and this AI budget is now moving to permanent budget lines, so funded by central IT at 39% and business units at 27%. And Andreessen Horowitz said that growing sentiment that generative AI is no longer experimental, but essential for business operations. And we expect this shift to accelerate as more products have AI and the scale increases over time as well. Now, once companies start scaling, the procurement processes also have to change as well. And they become way more disciplined, just like what we saw with cloud vendors or SaaS platforms previously. And so A16Z found two major trends. First, that enterprises are now using very structured frameworks. So looking at things like security, cost, reliability. And accuracy still matters, but in experimentation, when you're experimenting, you want to make sure that it's a good proof of concept. But it's not the only dominating factor anymore, with costs rising as a second. As one leader said, for most tasks, all the models perform well enough, so the pricing becomes a more important factor. And so when choosing models, enterprises are taking different approaches now. And this can be based off of the mission-critical piece of the application, or if it's customer-facing, they will typically call for more of the higher-tier models. But if it's a routine internal task, this is where costs become more important. Now, we're also seeing that as the AI application ecosystem matures, companies at a high level are actually shifting more towards buying than building. And honestly, the biggest reason is because of ROI. So specialized AI vendors can optimize very deeply for one use case, while internal teams are kind of spread thin across different kind of implementations. And internally built tools are harder to maintain and also may not lead to an actual business advantage for you. And so this is why we're seeing third-party AI applications being tested and put into production more quickly. Now, what can you really take away from this? See, if your organization is now moving from experimentation to scale, here are three categories that you should be looking at a little bit more in depth. First is obviously just defining what AI scaled actually means for your business. So which workflows do you actually want automated? What are the success criteria for it? And it's because this alignment will stop political friction kind of going forward. Next is building in a disciplined evaluation, not only for yourself, but also buying as well. So regardless of whether you build or buy, you need to make sure that you have good accuracy benchmarks, cost and efficient tokency metrics as well, integration requirements, and then obviously security and governance as well. For those who are building, just want to add on what the maintenance costs are also required for this as well. But all of these pieces help you make sure that your pilot is actually maintainable going forward. And then lastly, what is the operation model, especially for long-term ownership? And what I mean by this is once it's actually in production, like somebody needs to run it, right? And so that could be making sure that you have monitoring frameworks in place. What is the governance and security? Maybe there's a model lifecycle that needs to be done here. And then the change management with the business teams is also key here as well. And so these pieces will help you determine if it's actually going to be successful in production going forward. So we tackled budgets and we tackled procurement here, but I didn't really go too much into build versus buy. And so that's what my next video is going to be about. But anyways, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.